There we go.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah? Yeah, yeah. Oh, we'll play peekaboo again. All right. Popping up over on YouTube now. Yeah, yeah. Okay. I am muted on that side. Okay. We'll do it this way to start. Okay. I will give us a couple minutes, make sure we're all good here. It looks like YouTube is set up for us. Yeah, I think we're all good. Go, go. Okay, there we go. We're in gallery view now. All right. Can you say hi to everyone? You want to say hi? No. Okay. All right. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for joining us tonight with Birth and Breastfeeding Alliance for our Latch On SA 2020. Tonight we will have Holly Hernandez with Lotus Rehab chatting about pelvic floor basics. So yay. I will switch it over and let Holly go from here. So go ahead, Holly.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad y'all are here. Welcome, welcome. I'm excited to talk about all things pelvic floor. It is definitely my favorite topic of conversation, so I'm excited to be here. To start, I'm just going to share my screen so y'all can see my handouts here and help guide me a little bit. I'm super excited to be here tonight. So we're going to talk about the pelvic floor, in particular, how it relates to pregnancy and postpartum. I always like to put this little tidbit right here: empowerment through awareness. Just bringing some awareness into our pelvic floor, how it functions. I know for myself, as a mom of two, I remember not really having a whole lot of understanding of the pelvic floor, even being a physical therapist, but not specializing in pelvic health. And so one of my big missions is to change the conversation in the way that it's no longer, why didn't anybody tell me, but hey, this is what's going on, and seeking out those resources. So that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about doing these sort of community events, is to really bring that awareness and understanding, and know that you've got resources and support and people in your corner as it pertains particularly to the pelvic floor tonight. So a little bit about myself. So I am Holly Hernandez. I am the owner and founder of Lotus Rehab, which is a pelvic health physical therapy practice here in San Antonio. It's majority, probably like 98% of what I do all day is pelvic health, particularly as it pertains to pelvic pain, pregnancy, and postpartum. So that is me. So let's dive right into what is the pelvic floor? Why does it matter? Especially, I think it's a conversation that's being had more often right now in especially the birth and postpartum community. I think we're talking more about the pelvic floor, which is really exciting for me as a pelvic health provider, because more people have this information, are seeking out answers and seeking out providers. And so that being said, I feel like we've sort of had this shift of the pendulum into this sort of other area of, nobody was really talking about it, to now we're talking about it a lot, and it's a lot on social media, on the internet. And then it's kind of this question of like, how do I navigate all of this information? What's the information that's important? And kind of veering away from some of this sort of fear conversation around the pelvic floor, right? And people coming in and sort of being afraid on doing sit-ups, or what do I do to strengthen, or avoiding all ab and core strengthening activities, Do I do Kegels? Do I not do Kegels? What's the answer? You know, there's just a lot of information out there right now. So I hope tonight I can clear some of that up and help you to be able to navigate that information, know where to look, where to find that, and just help to guide a little bit some of that conversation. So what is the pelvic floor? The pelvic floor is actually 3 layers of muscle, fascia, connective tissue that make up this pelvic bowl. So you can see here in this this left image here, you can see this is the superficial layer of pelvic floor. It goes from your pubic bone around the vagina, around the anus, and attaches to the tailbone here. So this is the most outside portion. If you were looking at the pelvis, if you see my screen too, it's the most outside layer. So that's the superficial pelvic floor muscles. And then we also have the deeper layer of pelvic floor muscles that attach from the sacrum into the pubic bone, again, going around the urethra, around the vagina, and around the rectum here. So it literally creates this bowl. And I oftentimes say, like, can you feel or find your own pelvic bowl? So as you're sitting here, can you feel your sit bones that you're sitting on either side? Can you rock yourself forward and sort of feel your pubic bone at the front, rock yourself back and feel the tailbone in the back, and sort of sit right in that middle of your bowl? Can you feel what's happening in your bowl? Is it tense? Are you clenching? Do you have no sort of awareness in this space at all about what's happening there? And so just even finding that bowl space, finding those muscles, connecting with those muscles can be really, really helpful. And so what does the pelvic floor do? What do these muscles even do? I love this particular little circle diagram here. The pelvic floor is a huge multitasker. It's involved in endless parts of our life, especially as moms. It plays a role in so many dimensions. So number one, it plays a role in supporting our pelvic organs. So that's number one, support. Your bladder, you can see here in this image, the bladder sits inside of the pelvis, the uterus and the vagina sit inside of the pelvis, and the rectum here sits inside of the pelvis. And so the pelvic floor muscles, which you can see sort of create this hammock from your pubic bone to your tailbone here. So again, kind of sitting on that seat, feeling your pubic bone in the front, your tailbone in the back. This set of muscles, ligaments, fascia, all support the bladder, the uterus, and the vagina, and the rectum here. Sphincter function, so having urinary and fecal continence. Are you able to release urine when you want to, hold urine when you want to? Are you leaking when you exercise? The pelvic floor plays a role in closing the urethra. I love this little picture here too. So here's the urethra. There's actually muscle that runs around the urethra here. And then also the anus here. So being able to hold flatulence or have a bowel movement comfortably. Sexual function. The pelvic floor plays a really huge role in, number one, being able to have comfortable, pain-free penetration inside the vagina or inside the rectum, being able to relax those muscles to be able to have intercourse comfortably. And then also orgasm. So pelvic floor muscles play a huge role in sexual satisfaction and function. And research shows that the stronger your pelvic floor muscles are, the greater your orgasm. So it plays a big role in our sexual function. Stability. So these muscles give the stability in our pelvis. If you've ever heard of things like symphysis pubis dysfunction, pain in that joint in the front, the pelvic floor can play a role in that stability. Or SI joint pain, pain in the low back, or in this space in between your hip bones and your sacrum there, tailbone pain. So the pelvic floor muscles definitely help contribute to that stability, as well as abdominal stability. So thinking about things like abdominal separation or diastasis, the pelvic floor can play a huge role in that as well, in providing that stability in that core system. And then just keeping with the S theme, sump pump. So that's thinking about the pelvic floor as a diaphragm, as a sort of pumping mechanism. So moving lymphatic fluid, moving blood flow. Sometimes people will say things like, just feels really congested, or sort of swollen or bloating, as well as massaging and pumping of the GI system. So this can play a role in things like constipation or decreased GI motility. So making sure that pelvic floor is working functionally can have an effect on that as well. So it's just amazing, like all these areas, and yet so many people have never even heard of pelvic floor PT. And so know that there are resources and people out there that can help you to really put these pieces together to give you the support, the sphincter function, the sexual satisfaction, the stability, and the lymphatic movement in this system. So you're feeling good in your body. And so kind of tying into some of that, just some common things that we treat as pelvic health providers are either urinary or fecal incontinence, leaking, whether that's with exercise or running to the bathroom. I also wanted to kind of throw this in there. I get people all the time that are, especially after having kids or during pregnancy, I'm leaking when I cough, laugh, or sneeze. I'm leaking when I'm jumping on the trampoline. And so often I get people that come in and they say, hey, I need to strengthen my pelvic floor. I have weakness and that's why I'm leaking. But I also like to let people know that it's not always just about strength, but sometimes just coordination, or actually tension in those muscles. So Kegels are not always the answer to some of these common signs and symptoms. Pain, whether that's pelvic pain, pain at maybe a scar or at the perineum, pain with your tailbone and sitting, pain in those SI joints or the lower back. I see that a lot. Abdominal separation, diastasis, big buzzword right now in the birth community. And so if you guys have more questions on diastasis, please feel free to ask them. We can talk about them. I see so many more people coming in, and again, fear of movement, fear of doing sit-ups. Sit-ups are not the problem when we talk about diastasis. If somebody has a significant diastasis, it's not that sit-ups are bad. It's more about talking about the pressure and how we're using our muscles. And so, it doesn't necessarily have to mean like avoid sit-ups, but if sit-ups are being done incorrectly, that can play a role. And so looking at more, what are your symptoms? What are you experiencing? Are they causing pain or symptoms for you? And knowing what to look out for can be helpful versus just these blanket statements. Don't do sit-ups, don't do planks. And then I have people come in and they're like, I'm not using my abs at all. And that sort of swung the pendulum to the other side. So kind of finding this balance of what are you doing? How well are you functioning in this space? And do you feel strong and supported there versus sort of these blanket statements of only do this or only do that? Because, what I can do is going to be different than what the elite, level athlete can do compared to somebody who hasn't done a lot of exercise or movement. So those blanket statements don't fit across the board. So kind of finding this balance in the conversation. So I'm excited we're talking about it, but I also want to kind of help people navigate in a way that empowers them versus sort of having this fear of like, okay, what do I do now? I'm not sure, so I'm just going to avoid all the things. And then pain with intercourse, I see this a lot. And, knowing that there are more answers than just use more lubricant or are you using lubricant? Because that's not oftentimes a great answer for people who are having pain with intercourse, because there can definitely be a muscular component to this. This is all muscle right here. It can definitely be treated, and most people aren't looking at the muscle component to this, the nerve component to this. So thinking that, okay, I was just told to use more lubricant, that's not the only answer that there is. And pelvic floor PT can be really helpful for treating pain with intercourse. And whether that is sort of initial penetrative pain or deeper pain, we look at both of those. Pelvic organ prolapse is another one that is similar to diastasis and is sort of this pressure loss component. It's again very common, something that's being talked about a little bit more, but less than diastasis, and something that pelvic floor PT can really help you to manage, find solutions for, and really sort of feel strong and connected into your body. This is another one that when people get a pelvic organ prolapse diagnosis, it can be scary, and you can look on the internet and feel like, you know, be careful, don't lift anything. And for the most part, I don't see that with my clients. I find that learning these strategies, learning how to connect into your pelvic floor and how to functionally use your pelvic floor can really help you with these symptoms. And so that's another one that I see a lot. Bladder pain syndrome, also interstitial cystitis, which is just another diagnosis around some bladder pain, frequent urination. We treat that as well, especially pregnancy. Baby can be sitting on our bladder. Sometimes after giving birth, there can be some distension that happens. And so we can definitely help you to manage some of those bladder pain symptoms. The bladder is super trainable. So if you're finding yourself constantly going to the bathroom or frequent bathroom trips, know that as long as you're not having significant amounts of pain or discomfort with that you can actually sort of curb that a bit. So one thing I tell people a lot is avoiding those just in case trips to the bathroom, right? How many of us, it's like, okay, I know I'm going to the store, or I know I'm going to go somewhere, so let me go to the bathroom just in case. And that actually trains our bladder to go more frequently. So sometimes people don't realize that we can train our bladder. It should go about every 2 to 3 hours. And I even to the point of, I don't really prompt my kids to go to the bathroom, unless, you know, maybe if we're potty training, you know, really young, but for the most part, like my older one, I let him tell me when he needs to go to the bathroom, so that, you know, sometimes I think we get in the habit of, hey, just sit on the potty if you need to go. But that can sometimes cause some more frequent trips to the bathroom and become an issue. And then muscle spasms, tension, again, talking about sort of those muscles becoming tense, tight, and uncomfortable. And so pelvic floor PT can be really helpful at relaxing those. So those are just some common signs and symptoms when we talk about the pelvic floor, so that, you know, these are some of the things that we treat and more. Endometriosis pain, constipation, IBS, rectal pain, painful bowel movements. Those are also some things that we see. So that's kind of the anatomy, physiology, things that we do. But I also want to leave, you know, you guys are here. This is one thing that I want to one day be sort of common information for people. You know, we're told to do Kegels. Nobody ever tells us to do a reverse Kegel or to relax our vagina. And I see it all the time that people come in, they've been doing Kegels, they've been told to do Kegels, but we forgot about this like opposite component of a Kegel, which is this sort of, we call it eccentric loading or relaxation of the pelvic floor. So if I were to strengthen my arm muscle, right, and I just kind of sat around and contracted, but never actually relaxed it, I wouldn't be very strong and powerful there. I also like to use the hand as an example. So if I'm just constantly squeezing my hand or holding it like this all the time, it's not very functional. And I think using these analogies can be helpful to think about the pelvic floor in the way of, if I can actually relax those muscles, then when I really need them, man, I'm so much more powerful, connected, coordinated in these muscles. So I hope for one day, reverse Kegels, relax your vagina is like a common thing that everybody has heard. And then number 2, to do your Kegels on your exhale. So we're going to try that tonight. It's something I teach all the time. If it feels backwards, don't be surprised. If you guys have heard me speak before, you've already heard me say this. But never too many times can we practice this. I do it all day, every day. Okay, so we're going to connect to our core and our pelvic floor. So I want you to picture this image right here. You've got your diaphragm at the top. You've got your abdominal muscles in the middle, and then you've got your pelvic floor at the bottom. Okay, so you can picture this, picture it like a balloon. Okay, as you inhale, I want you to think about, instead of breathing up into your chest, which many times when we're stressed, when we've got a lot going on, we tend to breathe up here. I want you to breathe down into your belly. Now, it's not like a forceful push, but kind of like a relaxation or a softening into the belly. So try it. Big breath into your belly, breathing even all the way down into your pelvic floor. And then as you exhale, see if you can squeeze and lift and do a Kegel in there too. It doesn't have to be, it's not an all or nothing thing, just like a gentle little lift, like you're stopping the flow of urine or holding back gas, just a little one. And then inhale, let it go. And then exhale, see if you can squeeze and lift your pelvic floor. Don't be surprised if this feels backwards. I teach people this every single day, and most people, unless you've practiced it, it feels backwards. I so remember being postpartum and being like, hold on, wait, that was the wrong way. But let me tell you why this coordination works. If you sneeze, ha-choo, that's an exhale. If your pelvic floor is backwards, right? If you're Kegeling on your inhale and relaxing on your exhale, then when you sneeze, ha-choo, your pelvic floor has kind of been trained to say, okay, I relax on my exhale. But if you just work the coordination, inhale, relax, exhale, contract, then when you sneeze, ha-choo, your pelvic floor is already kind of trained to contract on the exhale. It's a strategy. Now, if you're not, try it for a little while. If you're not able to get it, it's okay. It doesn't work for everyone. This is not like a blanket statement for all people. But I find for many people, just getting this coordination can have a huge impact on supporting your pelvic organs, on stopping leakage, and on helping control your abdomen. So I hope for one day, when somebody says Kegel, they're already thinking reverse Kegel. Don't forget the relaxation. For every contraction, you need to let it go too. Let the belly go, let the pelvic floor go. And then also to do it with the coordination. Inhale, relax, exhale, squeeze and lift, and try it. See how it feels. Kegels are not for everybody. If you're having pain, if it's increasing your leakage or your symptoms, please stop and see a professional. But for many people, just this alone can make a really, really big difference. And then, so once you've trained that exhale, then too, you can use that exhale if you're leaking when you're jumping. Okay, I'm gonna stand up and see if you can still see me. But if you're leaking when you're jumping, imagine then I can go, and then I've trained my pelvic floor to contract on the exhale so I can use that breath to be able to jump without leaking. So when you're on the trampoline with your kids, you can try to exhale while you're jumping at that land and see if that helps you to be able to close your urethra and close your pelvic floor. Now, again, with that being said, for not everybody is it a contraction issue, but for some people, it's more of this relaxation. So before you jump, make sure you're relaxing and then contracting. So it needs to move in both directions. It's not just a strength, but also a length component. So I love that. If you guys have questions on it, ask away. And then talking about abdominal separation, talking about pelvic organ prolapse, this technique can also be helpful. Usually for my clients with any kind of separation, I'll add in this wrap component. So thinking about bringing these muscles together, you guys have heard pull your belly button into your spine before. That's not my favorite cue. I prefer wrap. Thinking about drawing these muscles, you can see they run from your back to your front. So lifting your pelvic floor and then wrapping your abdominal muscles and then making sure you let them go. And there's no right and wrong exercises for diastasis. There's no right and wrong exercises for prolapse. It's more on a case-by-case basis. What are your goals? What do you want to be able to do? And then working up to those activities. So my main goal is just to empower people to be able to use strategies to be able to do the things that they love and know that, you know, I have a really great mentor. Her line that is just stuck in my brain is, you know, we can push our abdominal wall harder than we think we can. And so I think that's something that many times people with DR diastasis need to hear is that, you know, we can do more than we think we can, and we don't have to kind of be really cautious and, I don't want to mess anything up or hurt anything, but know that there are people out there that can help you to do the exercises, you know. So just a little backstory about myself. I have some pelvic organ prolapse after having my kids, and like I like to power lift, and that's what I do. And so know that you can meet those goals. And just because maybe you have some of these symptoms, there are strategies, tools, and people on your side that want you to be able to do the things that are fun and enjoyable to you without those symptoms. So if you're leaking and you want to be able to run without leaking, there are people in your corner. So that is like pelvic floor in a nutshell. This breathing stuff I talk about all day, every day. Everybody that walks through my door gets some kind of breathing technique because it makes such a difference. But the pelvic floor is not a one size fits all. And I strongly believe that everybody with a pelvic floor should have an assessment at least once. And then really it can be an annual sort of checkup in how is my pelvic floor muscle strength? How are things going? You know, am I doing these movements correctly? Because we're told to do Kegels, but nobody's ever really following up to see how are we doing them? Are they really actually suitable for me personally, or is it causing more of an issue? So, you know, even one visit to a pelvic floor PT can be really helpful just to kind of get an idea of what your own body is doing. And then I also like that reverse Kegel component for my and you can see a pelvic floor specialist during pregnancy. That's the other thing. Sometimes I think people feel like they have to wait until postpartum to see somebody or wait until they're done having kids. But really, we can make huge progress during pregnancy. We can work on all of this stuff during pregnancy, prepare for labor and prepare for delivery, and then also work postpartum. So there's not like a time frame that you have to see a pelvic floor specialist. And then again, talking about that reverse Kegel during pregnancy, making sure you've got good length as well as that strength component. So if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I am here. Pelvic floor is my favorite topic of conversation. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. All right. I am looking over here in the YouTube chat and I don't see any questions popping in yet. But we'll leave it there because there is that little bit of a delay and see if people come in with those questions. I would say that was very informative on my side. I learned a lot. So thank you.
Of course. Of course. Of course.
I'm not seeing anything.
That's fine. Well, and I try to hit all the points that I see a lot, and sort of answer most of those, you know, just in case trips to the bathroom. DR, prolapse, leaking, all the things. Leave you guys with all the tips and all my little pearls.
Oh, we do have one. Someone said, is it ever too late to rehab?
No, never, never, never. I mean, they're muscles just like any other muscle in our body. I see women of all ages in my clinic, and we can make huge progress across the spectrum. And so, no, pelvic floor PT is for all ages.
Awesome.
Yes. And strength, I mean, strength training in general, you know, again, these are muscles. If once you start training them, they really make progress quickly. So having the sort of knowledge base to be able to strengthen or relax, whatever it is that we're needing to do, you know, it's not just about strength, but also about range of motion, flexibility, decreasing pain. So yeah, definitely. Any and all ages of people, and men have pelvic floors as well. So I only treat the female anatomy, but there are lots of pelvic floor PTs that see both female and male anatomy.
Yeah. Great. I think that's all I see for the questions.
Beautiful. I don't think so. I mean, I try to hit most of the stuff just so that there's some, you know, some overall awareness of things to look out for, some stuff that you can do, and some things that you can practice. And then, again, I think if somebody needed to see a provider, there are a number of resources out there that you can look up different providers in your area. So there's a directory called pelvicguru.com. You can go to the APTA website and they have a directory as well. And so there are a number of different directories out there that if you're looking for a pelvic health provider in your area, you can check it out. The only other thing I would add is if you're seeking out a pelvic floor PT, many times because it's what we specialize in, where many pelvic health providers tend to be out of network providers because we see clients one-on-one for an hour. And if you've ever been to physical therapy before, many times you're seeing your provider for, 15, 20 minutes and then going to do your exercises or things like that. And so sometimes insurance won't reimburse because they're out of network providers. And so one of my big things is when you're looking for somebody who specializes in pelvic health, look for somebody that does do an internal pelvic floor muscle assessment. It's definitely one of my little soapboxes is if you're not doing internal assessments, don't call yourself a pelvic health specialist in the PT community. And so, finding somebody that can actually internally assess these muscles, sometimes people are like, pelvic floor PT, what is that? What do I do? What do I go into anticipating for my first visit? And so what I can do as a pelvic health provider is I'm trained in how to assess these pelvic floor muscles inside of the vaginal canal or inside of the rectum. And so when we can feel these muscles, I can have an inkling of how your muscles are functioning just based on kind of your symptoms and history and what you're telling me. But until I actually feel those muscles, I can only guess how they're working and how well they're contracting and what their strength looks like. So if you are seeking out a pelvic health provider, make sure they do a pelvic floor muscle assessment internally. It can really provide a wealth of information. And then also, that being said, I always tell people it is not mandatory. It's especially not mandatory in a first visit. I get it. We can do some of this breath work. There's so much that we can do externally. But an internal pelvic floor muscle assessment can make a huge difference in understanding exactly what's going on in your body and sort of adding that final piece to the puzzle. And so if that's something that you're looking for, find a provider that can do that, because there are some PTs out there saying that they do pelvic health, but don't do internal assessments. And then the Physical Therapy Association does say after that first trimester, we can do internal pelvic floor muscle assessment, as long as that's something that you're comfortable with and your provider has cleared and you're not on any pelvic precautions, then we can see what your pelvic floor muscles are doing during pregnancy as well.
All right, awesome. Thank you again,
Cool.
Holly.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. These are my two little nuggets.
Oh, they're so cute. Is there a best way to reach out to you? Social media, email, website?
Yep, I'm on Instagram at Lotus Rehab. I'm on Facebook. I'm always trying to post content. You know, again, I think that this is information that people deserve and should know about their body in a way that's empowering and helps you to reach your goals. You can also check out my website, lotusrehab.com. I've got a phone number on there and an email on there as well.
Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
And we will save this here too. So even though it's live right now, it'll always be out there on YouTube, and we can always reference this later on. So
fantastic.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone. Have
a great night. Thank you, guys.
Bye. All right, bye. Have a good one.
Bye. You too.